Welcome to Sales for Nerds. I'm your host and chief nerd, Ruben Swartz. If you started a business because you love serving clients but realized you didn't like the sales and marketing aspect of running that business so much, this is the podcast for you. Sales and marketing doesn't have to suck. It can actually be a lot of fun. And on this show, we're going to teach you how to connect instead of network, teach instead of market, help instead of sell, so you can keep serving people even while you're building your pipeline and growing your business. Now let's get to it. Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm super excited to have with me Kristen Zhivago, owner and founder of Zhivago Partners, who helps small businesses market more effectively. She is also the author of How to Sell the Way Your Customers Want to Buy. Sorry, Roadmap to Revenue is actually the title. The subtitle, which is the part that I really like, is How to Sell the Way Your Customers Want to Buy. So, Kristen, welcome to Sales for Nerds. I know you don't have anything in your glass today. I've got some Edict Russian River Valley Pinot Noir. Welcome and cheers.
Thank you. Same to you.
Now, you have a background helping some of the same techie people that I do. Tell us a little bit more about how you got to this point of having your own marketing agency.
I'll try to make it a short road here. I started out selling machine shop tools when I was 17. I was always a tomboy. I was always into, mechanical things, and I liked to see how things were made. I failed miserably as a salesperson for machine shop tools because Pratt and Whitney just basically gave me a catalog, and I was wearing mini skirts. So they said, just go and you'll be fine. But one day I got into a machine shop with an old crusty foreman, and he came out along with all the other guys, who's this woman and this 17-year-old person. And the foreman said, well, tell me how your drill bit is better than the one I'm using now. And I couldn't. And he looked at me and said, you're going to have to know what you're selling. And I walked out of there with my tail between my legs. Senior in high school. I went from the top to the bottom in 2 seconds. And I decided at that moment that I would spend the rest of my life learning everything I could about tech and selling. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And, just staying on top of the bleeding edge. And my husband and I opened an ad agency in Silicon Valley in the late 70s. So that ages me. And we did that for about 12 years. And then the Mac came along, and my husband was a engineer / artist. These speakers back here are an example of that sort of thing. He loved making things mostly out of wood, boats, speakers, telescopes, all sorts of things. And I said, you know what? They're going to all take their marketing in-house with the Mac. So why don't you retire? He was 52 at the time, and I will figure out what to do with myself. And I reinvented myself into a revenue coach and spent the next 2 or 3 decades just turning sales and marketing departments around for companies as big as IBM all the way down to the mom and pops. But I always gravitated towards engineering driven companies because I love engineers. I love working with engineers, programmers, technical people, period. And I knew that they had trouble. Just the whole idea of marketing was like people with tassel shoes and ponytails and earrings, nose rings and stuff. And it was just all seemed like BS to them, but it isn't. It really isn't. And you can do it in a very logical, methodical way. And so I started the agency in 2017, the agency I run now, Zhivago Partners, because I could see that established businesses were doing really well with everything except their marketing. They were really having trouble with digital marketing. And I had a big background in that, so I started the agency and been doing that for 7 years now.
All right. Well, I have so many questions about that story, but just to try to focus a little bit, why do you think it is that these engineers, nerds, et cetera, have so much trouble with marketing, perceive it as being BS, et cetera?
Well, there are a lot of people in marketing that are BS. Okay, I mean that's part of the thing right there. I gave workshops to for a while. I ran workshops for engineers and about marketing called the marketing technology. I found it way easier to teach engineers about marketing than to teach marketing people about tech, which was interesting all by itself. Um, I have a little story that kind of puts it into perspective. I had a client who was telling me once that he had been sitting in a room full of engineers and he was trying to get them to tell him that, why is your drill bit better than the one I'm using now, kind of thing. And they were coming up with speeds and feeds and bits and bytes and stuff. And he finally said, if you were trying to sell Kentucky Fried Chicken, the headline would be dead chicken parts,
Hmm.
and the subhead would be fried in grease at 200 degrees or 400 degrees, whatever. Not one of you would have thought of finger licking good. And I love that story because finger licking good is the what I call the visual moment of satisfaction. It's the peak Kentucky Fried Chicken moment. You're licking your fingers, you haven't gotten indigestion yet. It's just the best it can be. And that's what you're trying to find. When I interview customers, my clients' customers, before we start doing any work at all, I interview the people that have already bought from them and I reverse engineer those successful sales. So we're supporting the buying process. We're not selling, we're educating, and we're meeting them wherever they are. That works.
Well, we all want to buy things. We just don't want to be sold, right? So why don't we just make it easy for
Exactly.
people to buy the way they want to buy, as your
Yeah.
book says?
Yeah. Exactly.
Now,
Yeah.
this is one of the things that I tell my customers to do because they often struggle with marketing and sales and how they position themselves in the market. And I love what you said about the chicken, right? They are out there selling dead chicken with certain temperature specifications. And what I say is go talk to your favorite customers and have them tell you what you did for them. And I think there's something about having a third party do this that
Yeah.
makes it
It
even
helps.
better.
Yeah.
But it's hugely better to talk to them rather than trying to think of it on your own, right? I don't think
Yeah.
there's any way you can do it inside your own head.
Not only inside your own head, but hiring marketing people to sit in the same windowless room with you and hear what they have to say about it. Not even to mention that now we're using AI to build personas. I didn't like personas when they first came out anyway, because eh, using AI now to build personas is like stalking your customer. It's like observing someone for 2 weeks, following them around, being watching them and seeing what they're doing and thinking, okay, this is how they behave. But you can't figure out what their mindset is when they set out to buy. And this is something I've been working on for a couple of years now. Their mindset is a combination of their desires, their concerns, and their questions in that order. So here's what I want. Here's what I'm concerned about, because there's no such thing as a virgin buyer and they're all skeptical. And here, if you pass those two things, if you make it clear you know what they want, and then you address their concerns right away, the next thing you have to do now, you still have them, is answer their very specific questions. And if you try to guess what all of that stuff is, you're going to lose them. They're just not going to stick with you. It's
So
sad.
is this sort of the difference between hiring a private investigator to stalk and take photos of someone across the street versus just going and having a conversation with them?
Yeah, exactly. That's a wonderful analogy. I love it. Because the detective will come back and say, well, at 2 o'clock, she always goes to the store. I mean, what does that tell you? It doesn't tell you how to sell your specific product or service to that specific person. And here's the interesting part. I only have to interview. By the way, I've interviewed thousands of customers for hundreds of companies, and in the book, I tell you exactly how to do this. But I only have to talk to 5 to 7 people of a given type. Like if you have the male and the female in a house thing, or a purchasing agent, a user, and the CEO in a business to business thing. Okay. You have to have enough of those people to get it. But 5 to 7 people of a given type, you will hear them say the same thing. By the third call, you start to hear them say the same phrase, even though they never talked to each other in their life. It's bankable information. It works. And then I take it all the whole conversation, turn it into a report, transcribed, anonymized, so there aren't any biases. And they can speak freely because I tell them up front I'm going to do that. And then I do a summary and recommendations report where I make it very crystal clear what the issues are. And then here's what we need to do.
Okay. Again, lots of questions, but let's start with how do you select the people to talk to first?
First of all, if you don't have any customers, it's harder. I just have to say that. You try to find the people who are not your friends, because that's a mistake entrepreneurs make. They sell to their friends and they think everything's easy.
Right.
But that's because their friends trust them already. Okay. So it doesn't work. You interview the kind of people who might be interested. So again, you have to work a little harder to get the data to make it work, but you can still get bankable data.
Well, let's
If you
assume you
have
have customers.
if you have customers, first of all, you want happy customers, and then you want customers who are representative of, the type of customer you'd like to have. I've never had a problem making the list with the client.
But I think you raise a really important point because there's a difference between representative customers that you have worked with and representative customers of the type of customer you would like to work with. They're often very different. And I think a lot of times people are so stuck with their history that they forget that actually 80% of their customers they should probably never work with again. But that 20% is,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad thing. They just were
No.
figuring it out.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it intentionally, you end up with this mishmash of people who are often not your ideal. So basically, customers that are happy to have worked with you, that you're happy to have worked with and would love to work with again. Is that a simple way
Yes.
of looking at it? Okay.
Absolutely 100%. And they're going to be exceedingly happy to help. This is one of
Yes.
the psychological aspects. I never worry about interviewing people during the buying process or before they've bought. Like us, and here's CEOs always say, "Oh, I don't need to speak to my customers because I see my salespeople talk to them all the time." And so I just say, "Okay, when was the last time you told a salesperson what you were really thinking when they were selling to you?" And that CEO goes, "Oh, okay." I mean, how many times have you been polite to a salesperson and said, "Thank you very much. You got him off the call or whatever," and you went right back to your computer and started looking again because he said or she said something that made you say, "Oh, geez, I'll never do business with that person ever."
Most of them, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of them, that's the problem because they never get it. They're not talking to you. They're
They're trying to
talking
make
to
their
some,
numbers.
yeah. And it's for years now, I've been saying traditional selling is dead. How many of us say, "Oh, how many salespeople can I talk to today?" I mean,
I don't have
nobody.
enough to do, right? It's like the scene in Glengarry Glen Ross where the guy gets really excited and it turns out they're just really old, lonely people who actually like it when the salesperson calls. Now
Yeah,
we have
exactly.
Netflix. There's no need
Yeah,
for the salespeople.
yeah, exactly. And in my book, I said nobody wants it because there was this whole thing about relationship marketing, which was, I could say this very grossly, but I won't. It was a dream of the marketers and the business owners, that they would have a relationship with people. Nobody wants the car salesman to show up for dinner.
Right.
They're not buying things to make friends. They're buying things to buy things. They make money to buy things. Okay.
All right. So we've got our list of people. Let's assume that we have customers for now, just to make things simpler. And I know you have a whole book and you have a whole practice and you spent decades doing this. So I'm not expecting like the entire secret sauce, but like give us a little taste of the secret sauce. What kind of questions do you ask folks and how should we be thinking about how these conversations should go?
I actually worked out a set of about 10, 12 questions over the course of all those thousands of interviews for all these different companies, hundreds of companies. And first, you just say, "How was it? What was the experience working with us?" By the way, these are all open-ended. I hate surveys because it's just your mind put into a questionnaire. I mean, how many times have you said, pick A, B, or C, and that's not me. I'm not in there. I mean, it's crazy. All right. So, how do you feel about our product or service? what brought you to us? What else did you look at? So you're getting a feeling for that buying. What made you want, what were you looking for? What was the solution you were looking for when you, and some, by the way, some of these questions will be answered and you don't have to ask the subsequent ones because they've already
Sure.
answered. So you definitely don't bore them by repeating it if they've said it already. And then things like, if you were the CEO of our company tomorrow, what's the first thing you would focus on or fix?
Mm.
Which is really good. I get beautiful answers to that question. What trends do you see in your market, in your line of work, if it's a B2B thing, or in this industry, if it's, consumer thing? What's your biggest problem in this area? So you're looking for opportunities, you're seeing things that you may not have even thought were important to people, that kind of thing. Um, what phrase would you use if you didn't know about this now and you were searching for this? So obviously I'm into SEO and Google and all that. So I want that phrase that they would search for. Of course, we do massive SEO research in the back end and see what your competitors get clicks for and all that, but I still want to hear that phrase from these folks. And then I think that's most of them. There are little questions that will come up as you're interviewing people, and you do have to, whoever interviews them needs to be smart enough to say, wait a minute, you said, yeah, it was okay. That's not, yeah, it was great. Then you say, there's a little doubt in your voice. Can you just tell me a little bit? And they'll think, oh, good, she's really listening, and they'll go ahead. But at the very end of the interviews, I always say, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? And they love that question because they know that I'm totally off the script. I'm letting them, say, usually they say, oh, you covered everything, but I just want to emphasize that one point, or there is one other thing. So you find out either what's super important to them or the thing that they wish they'd said.
And they feel heard, and you have invaluable data.
Exactly.
And by the time you do 3 or 5 of these, you start being able to predict the responses.
Exactly.
Now, if somebody is listening and says, that sounds easy enough, I can go do that. What are some of the things that they should look out for if they try to do this themselves?
Well, I'll put it another way. I'll answer you. I'll do the politician sidestep. In chapter 3 of my book, I lay it out exactly how you get these people on the phone. The only thing that's different now, I wrote the book in 2011. It's exactly, having been in tech for decades, I knew how to write the book so it would still be valuable and not be out of date. Because this is just basic people to people stuff. That doesn't change that fast. Um, uh, if you're a consultant working for a company, you have the company introduce them to you via an email and say, we've hired this consultant and we just want to see how we can improve. You don't say we're trying to figure out how to get more people to buy from us. Okay. And people think, okay, that's cool. And you don't need to, you don't need to tell them, they don't need to do any homework or anything. If somebody came and asked you, why did you buy these golf clubs or that wine or whatever, you'd have lots of stuff to say. So you get introduced and you make an appointment. And I used to do an hour, but these days people talk faster than they used to, and they get right to the point. So it's about 30 minutes, unless they go on and on, which is fine. And you make a spreadsheet with their name and their email and their phone number, and so you can keep track of what you're doing. This is all logistics. It's very basic.
Or some might
And you
even
have
say
the,
you could put it in your CRM, depending on if you had
oh
one.
yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yes. I do find spreadsheets easier in this particular case, just because you have a finite list. But anyway, then you interview them, and everybody's happy. They're happy. They feel heard. You've got your recording. You must record, as you were saying at the beginning of this session. And then you send it in for transcription. There's a company called rev.com, and you don't want to do machine transcription. You want to do human transcription. It's not that expensive. And you get a transcription back, and then we always edit them to take out a lot of the ums and ahs, and people start and stop sentences. They don't sound as smart as they really are. And so
Hmm.
you clean that, you clean out company names and things like that, because you do promise them it's going to be anonymous. You say at the beginning, I'm going to record this because I can't type as fast as you can talk, but I am going to anonymize these. I'm going to say, here's what everyone said in answer to this question. It's not like, here's what Bob said. It's here's
Hmm.
what Bob and John and Jerry and, um, so then they open up and it's all good. You get the transcription and then you turn that into this conversation report. And again, I spell this out in the book. And then you do the summary and recommendations report. And from that, you have a company meeting then with your top people and you decide, here's the big message. Oh, they don't really care about this. We thought this was important. We've been pushing this for years
Right.
and they care about their love us for this.
So again, lots of questions. Let me try to remember them all. Why not machine transcription these days?
It's not there yet. It's just not there yet. It makes stuff up. I mean, you could be talking to somebody about like we have a client that has, well, never mind. I worked with them a long time ago. Now they've come back again because the president retired and things are shifting and it's all good. And they make software that helps you uh predict the cost of producing, manufacturing and assembling a part, an engineering part, plastic, metal, you make decisions, machinery, how are we going to use it? So, um, I'm trying to remember what your question was now. What was your question?
Machine transcription versus human
Oh, yeah,
transcription.
yeah. The problem is if it's really technical, the
Hmm.
AI folks, the bots can't they make up words. It's really like spaghetti, word spaghetti. It's not fun.
What I
Much
find
more
is
human.
the machine transcription is good enough now for me to be usable, and I'm not like my
Oh,
stuff isn't
for
super.
normal things, yeah, just summarizing and yeah, yeah,
But even the stuff that it messes up when you get into it, like the part that I like is that you have this instantly searchable thing, so I can go in and say, I know that this part where we get into the weeds is going to be
yeah,
wonky. Let me go
yeah,
in there and edit it. And I
yeah.
think if for what human transcription is not that expensive, you're right. But if you're just used to using the machine transcription, I think you can work around that.
Sort of. It's also a little dry. The
Yeah.
human person will kind of pick up on what the person's trying to say. And then this is why we edit it, because they may say it in an odd way, or they'll take this sentence and that sentence,
Hmm.
and they'll kind of put them together like this. And then you turn it into a nice, smooth sentence that somebody would put in a book. And
Right.
it's exactly what the guy said, but he sounds way smarter than just having it be kind of jumbled up.
Off the cuff, sure. Now, my original question was about if somebody is listening and they just decide, hey, I'm just going to go do this. This sounds great. I got the questions. Let me just go call up my favorite customers and ask them these questions. Are they going to run into issues because it's them and not a third party?
Yeah, and not for the reason you think. Interestingly, people are polite and they don't want to hurt the feelings of the
Right.
CEO. So they'll hold back.
Right.
I had one client once, it was the president who got me talking to, they made this enormous vacuum pressure fabric cutting machine where they sawed the fabric. There's like, 1,000 pieces of this layers of fabric, and then they saw it around it. And the people that used these were massive, often Asian people in LA making t-shirts or something. So I interviewed a bunch of them, and one of them got on the phone with me. He was so mad. Every other word was the F word. He was screaming because the machine had gone down and he had no way to get it fixed right then. And he was just furious. So I finally said, look, I'm sorry to take your time in the middle of this emergency, but and I've never done this before, but I really need the CEO to hear this because I was also hearing from other people that the same thing. If the machine went down, you're out of business. That was it. You couldn't make your stuff. So I got him on the phone with the CEO, and he was so polite. The whole thing was different. I guess, okay, okay, very, very, oh, just very, respectful. And I said, okay, this is, I'm going to have to show them a little bit of the recording or something to understand the emotion behind this machine breaking down. So yeah, they'll withhold. So it's better to have some, and it doesn't have to be an outside consultant. It can be someone inside your company who's a good listener and
And
who
it,
really hears what they're trying to say and knows your business.
in theory, it could even be a VA,
A VA like what?
a virtual assistant,
Oh, virtual assistant.
right? Not an
Only if
employee.
they, yeah,
But
right, exactly.
if they're a suitably good listener and all that,
And they
like,
know your business. They have
right,
to know because the person on the phone is going to get bored really fast if they're saying something and the person pretends they understand.
right.
They'll even engineers, if you interview them, they'll throw out some technical terms and some obscure acronyms. And if you know it, then you follow up with a question and they know right away. Or in my case, I sound a lot younger than I am. And so they think, well, she's 25 or something. So I usually tell them I've, been around tech for decades. But if they say something, if they do that, I say, wait a minute, stop. I need to know what that means. I don't look in Google and cheat and say, oh, you mean this. You just say, I don't understand. Then they respect you and then they really open up because they know you're humble enough to be hearing them and taking this in and not trying to be the smartest guy in the room.
Got it. Okay. So we've got our people. We ask them the questions. We have the answers transcribed, recorded, digested, etc. How do we then make the most effective use of this information?
Yeah, I hate reports where they just, McKinsey or somebody comes in, they call it the thunk factor. They just thunk this thing on the desk and then nothing happens. Um, you set up this meeting. And the meeting is everybody's read the conversation report. And by the way, I've had conversation reports that were 150 pages. And you would think nobody in their right mind in this environment today would read it. They read every word because the more they read, the more they realize that they're learning something that they didn't know. It's like somebody telling you about your life. Um, so that's the first thing. You give them time to read the conversation report, and then you give them the summary report, and you guys go over that together with the bullets at first, the summary and everything, and then you build your plan. You say, okay, what's the real position here? What are they really buying from us? Why are they buying this from us? What are their desires, their concerns, and their questions? And then you build your whole marketing plan around that. Where can we find them? Where do they go to look for this? I mean, it's one of the questions. How would you buy this if you were doing it again? So that it builds itself. I mean, if you do
Right.
that, you have a good moderator, it keeps things moving. It builds itself.
Sorry, my somebody's at the door and my dog came through, just very excited. Um, so we'll edit that out later,
Okay,
hopefully.
I didn't hear the dog.
Oh,
So
good.
good.
My microphone must be amazing because she was
Yeah.
barking like a
No, I
mad
didn't
woman.
hear her.
Um, so this all makes sense, and I think what you're saying is so true. It's like of all the things that we want to hear about, even when it's not good stuff, we kind of want to hear about ourselves, and we have a lot of patience for absorbing that, especially when it's like, oh. And a lot of times I find with myself and with my customers, it's like they kind of had an idea, but
Hmm.
they didn't know the right words. They were kind of groping in the dark. And oh
Hmm.
yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. I knew that they
Yeah.
weren't excited about the Wizamajigger or whatever, but
Yeah.
anyway. So, and if you're happen to be a Mimiran user, this is where you could plug this stuff back into the mission and positioning screen. Like make sure you're using the customer's words for what they're really buying and what they tried and why it
Exactly.
didn't work and so on.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Now if people say, okay, this all sounds good, but I can tell that this will go better if I ask Kristen to do it for me. How long does it take? How much does it cost? What should people know to be an informed buyer if they want to be?
Yeah, I wrote the book because I can't do this for everybody. And I think everyone should do it. It solves so many problems in marketing because otherwise you're guessing. And
Yes.
guessing is like just sticking a knife in your throat. You may as well give up. It doesn't work. All right. So um I charge by the person. So if I end up talking to 10 people, it's a per person price. It's usually around I've been able to bring the price down a little bit because I can use AI to help some of the analysis. Like when I make all those bullets, I used to spend days making those bullets, and now I can do that with AI. So I used to be up to 650 a person. I'm down to around 450, 500.
Okay.
And then the hardest part is giving everybody in the phone, and I've delegated that or in Zoom, I've delegated that to a wonderful team member on my team, and she's really good at working with the guys and getting them on the phone and everything, making an appointment. Once that's done and the spreadsheet is full and I've interviewed everybody, meanwhile, the reports are getting generated. So it's maybe 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
I think the
So not
longest one
super
has been a
long.
month. Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to ask something earlier. You said, don't use AI for the transcription, but you feel like AI is good enough to help summarize the sentiment and pull out the key phrases and things like that.
AI is very good at summarizing. If you give it data, and we're seeing it everywhere, that's what it's doing when it goes scrapes the web and comes back with answers. AI is very good at that. I still check it. I still
Mhm.
proof it. I still have the conversation report on one side and their thing on the other, and make sure we haven't lost any little nuggets that turned out to be the phrase that we should build the whole campaign around,
Right.
But yeah,
Okay. That makes sense. I'm still a little distracted because I did a recent podcast episode where the whole podcast episode was literally a conversation with the AI. And it was just speaking. I was speaking, it would listen, parse what I was saying and come back to me. And it was a little bit mind-blowing. Anyway, if people would like to do that, where can they find more about you? Or maybe even if they just want to buy your book?
okay, so the book's on Amazon. It's in Kindle, it's hardcover, and it's audio. Personally, if I were somebody buying my book, I'd buy the hardcover. I know it's crazily not technical, but I have spreads in there where I take light scrutiny, medium scrutiny, heavy scrutiny, and intense scrutiny buying processes, and I break it out. And so it gives you a map. That's why I call it Roadmap to Revenue. In addition to interview customers, I take the whole buying journey for those types of products and help you know exactly what kind of questions they'll ask and how you should address them. Okay. And that's better in print, just the way it is. They can also just Google Kristen Zhivago, and I'll just be page after page after page because I've been writing so much stuff and appearing in podcasts for so many years. So,
And there's
and
not a
our
ton of Kristen
website,
Zhivagos out there.
no, that's right. And the website is zhivagopartners.com.
And of course, we'll have links to all of this in the show notes if you happen to be somewhere you can't remember all this. But I really appreciate what you're saying, Kristen. And I think one of the things that I've tried to keep in mind as a techie who tends to get a little bit lost in the tech stuff at times, it's like if you're trying to buy someone and you speak English and someone else is speaking Spanish, it's going to be really hard for that sales rep to close the sale with you. Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
nice if you were speaking the language your customers are speaking and they can just buy from you easily?
that's really another good analogy. Good for you. You get the star today.
Oh, thank you. I must be my creativity must be
Yeah.
inspired.
Have some
Thank
more.
thank you so much, Kristen. Really appreciate you. And thanks for coming on Sales for Nerds.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Drop an iTunes review or a review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you've got a friend who would benefit from this episode, let them know about it. If you've got a friend who wouldn't benefit from this episode, but you just haven't talked to for a while, now's a great time to give them a call. Thanks for listening. Until next time.